Hi, how's everyone doing? Let's talk about politics a little bit today. So, I never wanted to be a politician. I am very interested in political philosophy, and we are, at the end of the day, we are living in this world and we are connected with each other. So, Gandhi once said that at the end of the day, a really spiritual person cannot help but get involved with politics to some degree. I mean, it depends on what level, unless you're totally, totally samadhied out of this plane of earthly existence and you're just, living a samadhi all the time. Other than that, a person who feels a sense of responsibility towards the world will have to engage with it in some way or other. And so today I want to discuss first some of the things going on, the historical trend of these things, and also, most importantly, what we can do about it, especially as individuals in this world. Okay, so you guys can probably guess that I am not a huge fan. I'm not a fan of war. And there are times when people are forced into it because out of righteous defense against aggression, against invasion, against a bunch of injustices, that you are forced, you have a call to arms. Or you have a sense of duty, a righteous duty for rebellion, for revolution, for social good, to improve the world in a certain way. So you're called to violence in a way that's kind of forced, right? But even as Gandhi did, you did not need violence per se. But sometimes you have to defend yourself. But in general, war and aggression, let's just say that any act of hatred and violence in a very philosophical, metaphysical sense, right? What is the law of physics? Every reaction generates an opposite and equal reaction, and that is just a law of existence. It doesn't just apply to the physical domain, it applies to energy, and it applies to thought, and it applies to feeling. So when you give an action, you can trust that there is a reaction being generated, whether or not you're aware of it. And such a thing, spiritually speaking, can be termed karma. On a global political scale, mass karma exists and people do pay the price in terms of civilization, in terms of large nations, large races, and it is the geopolitical reverberations of that cannot be felt for sometimes for generations. Sometimes it bubbles immediately. So I think, let's just talk about the United States, where I am based. And the US was founded on the loftiest of principles, the greatest virtuous, most virtuous of enlightened thought. It is the direct fruit of enlightenment in Europe, of the best thinkers, having these ideals, these noble visions of a man-created government for the people, by the people, right? No loftier ambition. Before, you had all these monarchs, all these kings, all these despots, these oligarchs. They didn't want to serve for the people. And in the times that they did, it was just kind of based on the character of that particular king or emperor we're talking about. But in general, it's like, the masses, those are the peasants. And we are the aristocrats, or we're the noblemen. There's a feudal structure. For the first time, people thought, with education, with enlightenment, with self-growth and development, we can trust the people to carry the reins of democracy. And what is the United States but an experiment in that, and a greatest flowering of that self-ennobling gift of man, that we can actually progress, we can actually take care of ourselves, and we can look out for ourselves, and we can take care of each other. So the best ideals. And in these ideals, in these intentions, there was this propelled America's rise to dominance on the world stage is very much, it's not just brute military power, but also this undercurrent of idealism that's founded on right, that's founded on, I want to do good in the world. I want to help right the so-called the evils of the world, to be a force of good. When Europe was falling apart, was self-destroying itself, to step in and try to help and try to reconstruct Europe, and to try to serve as the beacon of a new world order founded on democratic principles. Respect between all nations, respect between all peoples, harmony and peace. Such is the cornerstone of this modern global order. And why is this self-destructing? Because, in a very deep sense, it stems from the collapse of this very ideal upon which this nation is based. And this is directly because of the corruption of this ideal and of this virtuous foundation by the forces of evil, by the selfishness and greed inherent within our current capitalistic society. When a government is so focused on self-interest and greed and so-called strategy and self-aggrandizement, that it forgets the people, that forgets the growth of society, the harmony between peoples, when it's out for its own interests, when it's out for its own class. So when basically the rich dominate the poor, when the strong bully the weak, when it forgets to be a force of good, that's when everything starts to just self-destruct and karmically has its influences. So let's trace this back to the Cold War. While the US became the most dominant power on the global stage, how did it treat its newfound power? With not enough a sense of responsibility and example. And this is where its youth shows, the arrogance of youth, because America is a very young nation. And for very old civilizations like China, this is where they go like, ha, 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 ha. Watch and learn, kids, watch and learn. What is China trying to do right now? The so-called rise of the Chinese dream is nothing but a hearkening back to eons ago, millennia ago, when China was the dominant global power, when the East was the center of the world, 中国, literally the center of the entire universe, the central kingdom, the center upon which everything revolves. How did it amass so much power? From a nation that's based in its very core on principles of philosophy that goes back to Confucius, goes back to the sages, goes back to Lao Tzu. There's a heavy, 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 very ancient wisdom there. And that can also be traced back to India. Probably the most ancient civilization, as I'm learning. The religious, the Buddhism, the spiritual foundation of civilization at its very core. Man at its most enlightened, when it's most connected with God, when its society structure and principles that's most aligned with the harmony of the universe. 天道, what is the way, what is the actual Dao, the Tao, the way, the harmony, the laws, the invisible laws that structure all mankind and society and the world order? What is the Tao? It is just God's cosmic law. So when society is most structured and harmonized with that, there is a wisdom to how it grows. The US leaped into dominance with its rise of economic power, basically reaping the fruit, the profit of the world wars, and ascending to the global stage. But it has not treated its newfound hegemony, its power, its dominance globally with the responsibility and serving with wisdom that this role entails. Instead, it's become a bully and a hypocrite. Back in college, I had a course on international relations, and our professor, he was one of the leaders in this field. He posed our precept this question: if Henry Kissinger were here, like, would you try to impeach him for human rights abuse? Like, would you support basically taking out his plane as he's flying over some country and basically, you know, saying that, okay, that, like, basically making him face his human rights abuses? And I was very firmly like, yes. I was like, yes, this man is responsible for so much genocide. Okay. Anyway, I got a little distracted. What was I going on? Yes. So the brutality of these genocides, Vietnam, Indonesia, all these different places, in the name of power, in the name of so-called democracy. The US, these are some very obvious cases. The lesser known ones, the blood that was shed in countries such as Guatemala. When I was reading about this, I was just crying for the people. Finally, after centuries of abuse, of domination, of imperialism, finally being able to overthrow the shackles, the chains of their past, and finally entering a very budding democracy that should be protected, should be sheltered, should be nurtured by a big brother. The US should have been a big brother. But instead, the US stepped in, and to protect the interests of its businessmen, the corporate interests of the United Fruit Company, its various corporate interests, it overthrew these democracies. Chile, Guatemala, countless examples. I was just crying. This blood has been shed, and we are paying the price now. We have been paying the price in the form of gangs, cartels, violence, extreme generational violence in Latin America, and these immigration issues, all of these coming to head, the clash of civilizations. This is karma. They had a chance at a democracy. They had a chance at nurturing the people, having a good society, instead being forced back into the shackles, the chains of dictatorship that their societies are still healing from, and still unchained, enslaved to, in many ways. Just generations of time that could have been used for progress and upliftment and education and all of these things that we profess in terms of democratic values, but instead another form of imperialism. What's the difference between European imperialism and the American one? Corporate interests. We've read about Coca-Cola, how Coca-Cola is an arm of imperialism, yes. Anyway. Way back when Thucydides wrote, the strong do what they must. The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. And this made a deep, deep impression on me, because I was very idealistic. I thought, of course foreign aid is good. Of course helping is good. Of course, like, all these, like, noble ideas, intentions are good. But then, like, when you face the reality, the geopolitical reality, the school of realism, these actors that may not, these so-called bad actors on the world stage, and realizing, the best of intentions fall flat sometimes, because you're faced with all of these these forces of inertia, corruption, greed, all of these things that subvert the best of your intentions. Foreign aid going to all these developing nations and being sucked into these cesspools of corruption and not leading to the impact that it should. Anyway, war is being fueled by national interests, these the military-industrial complexes, arms, people who want to sell arms. So yeah, when you look at these things, the world seems very dark. So, yeah, going back to the Middle East, which is the current hotspot of issues today. I mean, if we talk about karma, in a huge sense, and I'm sure most people can already see this, that in a very sense, it's a very strong sense, the U.S. is actively creating breeding grounds of terrorists. And like currently, and especially in future generations, like what is ISIS? How did it form? How can you expect terrorists not to form when the countries have been stripped, bombed to the ground, without hospitals, without schools, without any sense of societal chance at upliftment and growth? When you have nothing, you resort to violence. It's just mass karma. So what the US and Israel is currently doing is basically creating, sowing the seeds for future violence against itself. And so in a very practical sense, this is why war should be avoided, because all of that is going to come back to you. It does not make any sense. So what can we do, honestly? What can we do? I have a good friend who's very humanistic, very idealistic at his core. And he was telling me how he was showing me these news, and I told him, brother, like, stop reading, stop being so in tune with bad news, like stop watching the news. And so he said, yes, he said, I'm trying, but it's very hard. And I said, first, what we can do is uplift our own vibration. Having a positive sense of vibration and raising our own frequency and emitting positive thoughts, prayers, and vibrations does more good to the world than if we become sucked into the negativity and the drama, which is also part of the Maya, the delusion. So if you see many enlightened people, they don't actually care at all about world politics and stuff, because in the highest, most metaphysical sense, it's just shadows, right? Vedantic philosophy, they're just waves on the ocean, or shadows of light and dark playing upon the cosmic movie of the dream of life. So in a sense, it's almost like, yes, nothing matters. But because we're still in this world, it does matter in the sense that we all have a duty to fight against so-called forces of evil. So fight against evil and to bring out the good. In this war that exists, for example, in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Macrocosmically, the war is happening outside in the world. Microcosmically, or most importantly to ourselves, the war is happening right here. This is the war we fight. And so every day, taking the war inside, introspecting within myself, what have I done to overcome the evil within myself? What have I done to fight? We're all warriors. What can I do to emanate the positivity? And I think so, the positivity of light and peace and good and kindness around me. And so in a very real sense, what we can do in this society, first of all, is that we have to uplift ourselves. I started off this video saying this country was founded upon the loftiest ideals of virtue, of good, of education, of progress, of enlightenment, self-enlightened man. We have to return to those same ideals and virtues. That means we must make the effort to enlighten ourselves, to wake up from our own self-imposed bad habits, our delusions, our greed. Instead of chasing more and more and more and more, I want this, at the expense of you and you, I'm competing with you, I want more, I want better. How can I share? How can I uplift? Instead of drawing lines of hatred and bigotry and racism and division between all kinds of things, classes, races, creeds, religions, gender, sex, background, class, against all these things, what can I do to unite? Seeing other people not as any of those things. I don't see you as a man or woman or a Muslim or a Jew or Christian or poor or rich or whatever it is. I see you as a human. I see you as a soul. I look into your eyes, I see your soul. And in your soul, I smile. Your soul, I connect with. Your soul, I love. When I go to different countries, I purposely tell them I'm from the place they don't like. So when I was in Brazil, I told them I was from the US because currently Brazil does not like the US. If I told them I'm from China, I try this. Like, it's kind of like I have this like penchant for doing social experiments on a mini level. I notice if I tell people I'm from China, people feel more warm, like they're much more warm towards me because because of all the inroads that China has made in terms of investment, in terms of, soft politics in that area, and also because of the more leftist leaning kind of politics in Brazil right now. So people tend in certain parts. So people warmed up to me when I was like, I'm from China. But if I'm from the US, because of the anti-Trump sentiment, because of, you could almost sense like there's kind of like an aversion or kind of like but I said that on purpose. Why? Because I wanted to show them that a person from the US can still treat you with smiles, can still be warm, that there's nothing wrong with someone from the US. You have to be an example. Similarly, when I was in India, I said on purpose I'm from China. I did the opposite. I did the exact opposite. I could have said I'm from the US, and they would have loved me a lot better because of the current geopolitical tensions between India and China right now. They tend to not like China as much. But I said that I'm from China on purpose. Why? For the same effect. To show them, a Chinese person can be, again, all smiles, be gentle, be kind, be all that, etc. We can be friends. And so we have to be an example of that. You can be friends with someone totally different political beliefs. The other day, I want to tell this like brief little brag about, how God has my back. So I basically scratched someone's car. And I was in Walmart and I was like praying. I was like, okay, God, please help me with the situation. And then literally just a few minutes later, this man appears in the aisle of the car section and tells like, do you want some help? And I knew he was sent by God. And I was like, yes, actually, I would like some help. And then he offered his services to basically help repair the car and to fix it and to help me in just an unimaginably kind and generous way. And the next day I drove with the other person to their house and they helped me look at everything. And while we weren't able to address everything there, just the sheer warmth and kindness and generosity of this stranger who is now my friend. And the first thing I noticed about him when going to his house is he was wearing a Trump hat, Make America Great Again. But this did not at all draw any line because from then he was my friend. He offered me his help, his generosity. I don't care how many Trump hats you wear. I don't care if you support Trump. I mean, I don't have to tell him this and anything. Like, you guys know what I feel. It doesn't matter if you like Trump or not. It doesn't matter if you're like a hardcore right, you could be even, I'm sorry, I won't support these beliefs. You could be even a neo-Nazi, but that does not affect on a soul level that I can connect with you and still love you as a human being. Can I not? We can still be friends as a human being. That's why I revere Gandhi so much, like my father, people were telling me these critiques they had about him, but at his core, a man of God. They cannot actually critique him if they don't know what he stands for and at his heart what he is, which is nothing but the purest good and love for humanity beyond caste. All the work he did to remove caste hatred and division, bigotry, all the work he did to remove Hindu Muslim hatred and strife. I have the greatest respect, deepest reverence for this man. And so when I was in India, I met this Israeli man, this backpacker, and we started talking. I asked him about Israel's position in Palestine and basically Gaza and everything. And, because all Israeli youth actually have to serve in the military from a certain age, he was telling me he was going in college. And I was like, like, you look kind of older. And he's like, oh yeah, that's because they basically spend their best years, they spend their college years in the military. How is a nation not prone to war and aggression when all its youth are basically forced or trained in the military? So they spend their college years in the military, and afterward, they start their higher education if they choose later, like in their late 20s, which actually makes kind of some sense because by then people actually know more of like they're more developed and mature, because most people at that age, young 20s or as a teenager, you don't actually know what you want to do in life. So you always go into the wrong major or do whatever, and you're like forced on this path you don't want to do. So it's actually more of a waste of time. So actually in that sense, I think it makes sense to do higher education when you're older, right? Late 20s, early 30s even. I was like, that makes sense. But anyway, I asked them about this even though it was sensitive, because we're both open enough to discuss. At no point in our discussion did ego or did he become defensive, did that come up, and I respect him for that. But he was telling me how he's like, we don't have a choice. He told me, yes, it seems bad, but we don't have a choice. And I pushed back. I said, how can you not have a choice? I was like, but what, how can you reach the point where destroying a nation to the ground, destroying their social infrastructure, hospitals, schools, bombing civilians, how could all the starving people to death, how could it reach that point, and how can you tell me that's the only option? I was like, I don't believe in a humanity like this. I don't believe that the only option is to basically kill a people for your own self-preservation. And if that's the case, I will not choose that as my route to self-preservation. Right? I didn't exactly say it like that, but I was like, how can that be the only choice? I said, first look at Gandhi. I was like, we're in India. Of course, there's a different option. If Gandhi can do it with non-violence, with peace, with love, if you can lead a whole political revolution of movement with love, how is it not possible? And then actually that got him to think. He's like, you're right. He's like, I didn't think about it that way. He's like, there maybe is a different option. But when you're in an environment, when you're in an environment where you're constantly influenced by propaganda and everyone, the entire voice, making you feel defensive, fight or flight mode, you're constantly in this and you feel like you don't have a way out except through basically destroying the opposition. I mean, or even seeing things in terms of that. When you fail to see the other's humanity, the basic sense that we are one, when you lose all sight of their humanity and thus your own humanity, can such violence and destruction and utter brutality be possible? And so what can we do? Back to this, what can we do? Is to keep being in touch with our humanity at the core. The only way we can fight against this, you and I sitting here as civilians, not part of the military, not forced into war, thank God, but we're still contributing it to with our tax dollars, with our complicity in it, because we're part of the system, unfortunately. And it feels we feel so powerless sometimes. So you can go protest, right? That would be a form of righteous protest. You can join the Walk of Peace, which I found so beautiful and uplifting that the monks did recently on their march to Washington. It seems so negligible. It seems so, what can this do? But trust me, those are the very essence of positive prayers and vibrations that we need, the light that we need, because along the way, they inflame the hearts of people. And that's where true democracy, true freedom reigns, is in people's hearts and minds. To uplift people, to show them that is the other way. A lot of times you just need a switch. You just need someone saying, there is another option. You need that light turned on in your brain. Because it's like, oh, we either kill or we are killed. We either fight or like we do this. And it's like, or there's so much hatred. And then you just need a few dozen monks calmly trekking a few thousand miles to show people all along their path, all the communities and people they touched, that there is a different way. There is a way of peace. And we need people to remind us of that. So in a very strong sense, in a practical sense, yes, it works. And in a metaphysical sense too, because without going too deeply into this, because it's a science in of itself that's very, very deep, that humanity has not become aware of yet, is that thought, all power comes from thought, energy comes from thought. Before actions are created, the seeds of actions are formulated as thoughts. And so the greatest actual energy we can give to people is our thought and our energy. And before thought is vibration. Om, what is Om? The word of God, so called, right? First was the word of God. What is that vibration? It's vibration. That's energy. And a force field, it's love. So you can emanate the energy, the vibration of love, or you can choose to emanate the vibration of hatred. And that's a choice every single day we can choose to do. Emanating vibration of love, why does prayer work? A lot of people think, oh, that's like kind of sounds a little tantric, a little voodoo. Why does prayer work? Is because prayer takes the energy, the power of thought, of healing vibration. Just try this. If I look at you, right? Even separated through time and space, there is vibration, there is connection, there's communication. And actually, irregardless of time space, as science progresses, it will eventually break into higher dimensions, 5th dimension, 6th dimension. You will realize beyond what we are currently capable of grasping, there are dimensions that's beyond time and space, beyond 3D, 4D, okay? So beyond all of this, we are able to emanate power of healing through our positive thoughts, through our positive intentions, our positive feelings, our goodwill, our belief ultimately in the good, the power of love, of healing, of peace. We are all responsible to emanate this. So we can pray, and prayer does work. The other day when it was like the height of this current conflicts, I was feeling a little like, it's like, I'm going to pray. I am going to pray. When I was like, oh, are we going to bomb Iran? Are we going to go nuclear? I was like, what can I do right now? I am going to pray. I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray very hard. And not to say that, but enough people did this that actually it was diffused momentarily, but keep that going. In a grander sense, beyond just current issues that we're upswept by, which we shouldn't. Maintaining inner calm is very important. That's the thing. While all this is going on, the most important thing we can do is to keep our inner peace and harmony and our continuous smiles and good vibrations towards the world. In a stronger sense, as we continue to do this, uplift people around us, better ourselves, continually go for higher self-improvement, continually introspecting, how can I become better? How can I serve people? How can I do good in society? How can I actually be a force of good? And then educating our youth, educating other people, right? Being a force for good, picking up trash in the park, something simple like that. Doing something for society, doing something beyond yourself, volunteering. Go beyond yourself. As more and more people do this, correcting the excesses of society. The US is self-destructing because it's reaping the karma, honestly, of its excess, of its arrogance, of its bullying. It is because, too young, too naive. There's a Chinese meme, too young, too naive. It is kind of like that. The US is a very young nation. It was an experiment. And it will continue to grow and inspire. And the virtues upon which it is based, which this nation is based, will never ever die. It will continue flourishing and uplifting the world. But the US has relied on its might, and it has bred arrogance, has bred greed, relentless, unrestrained greed and domination and aggression and bloodshed. The US has not taken responsibility of its own power. With great power comes great responsibility. I'm sorry to say this nation has not done well in that respect, and so has caused a lot of bad karma. And so, this nation. But that is also the Tao, the cycles, the rise, the fall. It's natural, the cycles. China will rise and it will fall again. It's no country, no person or nation. Just as we grow into youth, we feel the vibrance of youth, we achieve the maturity of middle age, and then we decay and we die. It's just a natural process. So not to take it too seriously, but it's just part of the way it is. So yeah, part of the arrogance, but also part that's just the way it is. You have dominance, you grow in might, and you will decline. So the whole make America great again, yes, it's great, but how do you actually make America great? Not through bullying, not through killing, not through war, not through anger, evil, aggression, bloodshed, not through all of these things, hatred, bigotry, xenophobia, causing division, strife, flaming sentiments of hatred, but through love, through actually serving, being a good example, actually helping the weak, uplifting the weak, growing as a society, bettering itself. You have to inspire, you have to lead with your example, and you have to have good leaders. Where do good leaders come from? It comes from a good populace that has the eyes and the virtues and good values to select those leaders, right? When I see people like Andrew Yang, like it still gives you hope, even though they're far and few in between. Because so many, unfortunately, crooked, corrupt, why the sages of China, the Confuciuses, the Laos, all stress the importance of self-introspection, of self-alignment beyond anything. The highest Tao, the highest power is not to become king and to become this and this, but it's always an inner battle. The first and highest duty of every person, not how much money you make, not what possessions you acquire, not the achievements XYZ. It is always the attainment of character. What is character? Self-control. What is self-control? Morality. By acting for good, when you have a choice, 鱼与熊掌不可兼得. I told my channel this. When you have fish in a bear's claw, you cannot have both. When it is between self-interest, when it is between self-aggrandizement, greed, and lust, and desire, and bullying, and whatever it is, and versus humility and service and all the other good traits that we can name, and actually the good of humanity over yourself, self-sacrifice, all those good things. What do you choose between laziness, inertia versus discipline and hard work? Between these things, like every single day, it's a struggle. Like, what do you choose? You cannot have both. Self-indulgence versus self-sacrifice. What do you choose? You're always at a crossroads. Every single decision, you're at a crossroads. What do I choose? And so the saints, sages, the greatest leaders are nothing but those people who have at every crossroads they wanted to choose. Even though we're not perfect, we're not perfect as humans. We always make mistakes, but to consistently realign yourself, introspect, realign. Oh, I made a mistake. I'm going to realign. I'm going to try to choose better every day. Improving. I'm going to fall. I'm going to try better. So Andrew Yang, like at first I thought his policies were very impractical, and I was like, I mean, of course he's not going to be elected, it's not going to work, so-called, but just the seed, just the influence, the inspiration that he brings to people. When I see his interviews, when I see the light, his soul, when I see his soul, I see this is someone who actually cares. This is someone who cares for society, not for himself. When I see other people, like it doesn't matter left wing, right wing, like it doesn't matter left, right, blue, red. I see people in all these, various positions that are completely, you can just see they're motivated by self-aggrandizement, self-greed, and just, the desire for power, whatever it is. You see someone like Andrew Yang, you're like, wow, he cares about society. He cares about people. He cares about this government, this country, and he actually wants it to go on the right path in a real way. And we need more of that in every sector, on every level. You may not be president, a presidential candidate, even close. You may not have any interest in being a politician. I don't have any interest in dabbling, nor do I have any talent, frankly, in dabbling in politics. I literally offend every single person. Like when I tried, working in government and doing an internship and that, I was like, oh my gosh, you cannot believe how many people I offended by my truth. I have none of the soft skills in political maneuvering and politicking. No soft skills, no skills at all, because I would just say what's actually true or what's, honest. And people, that's not how politics works. You need more that's again why I revere Gandhi, to be able to maneuver all that and not get tainted in the mud, to work in mud, but to be like a lotus. To work with all of these interests, but always be guided by principle, always be guided by morality, to be guided by God. I mean, a saint in the greatest sense, a great soul in the greatest sense. Anyway, so basically I cannot do that. Basically that's nowhere in my wheelhouse, but I mean, I can try to better myself. Anyway, basically what I'm saying, you may not be any of those, so George Washington and Gandhi, you may not be any of those, and most of us are not, but we can always follow the example of what we can always be, the fruition, the highest achievement of what we can be, which is the soul, which is equal in all of us. My great master, in the second coming of Christ, he teaches us, what is the resurrection of Christ, the second coming? Are you looking for it? Christ, when are you coming? No, it's here. Look, close your eyes, come here. Where is the second Christ coming? It's here. It's here. Christ will resurrect within you. The kingdom of God is within you. Resurrection happens within you. It's when you resurrect yourself. I'm not a cringing human being. I am not a composite of my greed, of my selfishness, of all these things that make me a so-called mortal being. No, I'm a mortal child of God. When you wake up and you realize I have all these things. I have all these things that Gandhi has, Washington has, God has, because I was endowed with the same gifts. I can always try to better myself, embody those things that I see as the highest virtues. I may be living in this world of mud, but I still want to be a lotus. I may fall in the mud, I may eat mud, drink mud, but I will not be mud. I can't feel like mud, but out of the mud I will grow the lotus. Yes, we all can. So I wanted to say, not to bemoan the state of the world, not to feel dragged down in negativity on these bad news, but I wanted to share this sense of empowerment, that it starts within you. The revolution starts within you. The peace starts within you. Great brother, Brother Ananda Moiji. Oh man, this man, I was like, wow, he feels like my father. Like when I hear him talk, so inspirational. The great disciple of my great master. He says, he tells a story. He's like, a man once went to him for counseling and was talking about how bad the world was. You see this trend every single generation. We bemoan the state of the world. We say, oh, the world is falling to pieces. The world is so evil. It's like worse than it's ever been. Every single generation. But we're actually slowly getting better, are we not? That's what I failed to see before. We're actually slowly becoming more and more enlightened. If we just see how much we've progressed. No longer does slavery exist on a mass level. I mean, of course, there's modern forms of flavors of slavery, of all of that, of genocide, all of that. But in terms, we're still progressing, honestly. So I didn't see that before. I did not have that perspective before. But anyway, so this man went in for counseling, says, brother, the world has gone to pieces. Like, oh, I want to do this. I want to be a social justice warrior. I want to do this. How can I help the world? How can I fight against this war? And the brother said he knew that this man was unfaithful to his wife. And so he says, before you do anything, you have to be faithful to your wife. Why? Because it comes back to that inner battle that I talked about. Before you try to fight the outer battles, the injustices of the world, those are only reflections of who you are inside. None of these things, these outer forms of mud, could have been created if we were pure enough inside. If we spoke no evil, heard no evil, if we did not engage in all of these things, if we restrained our desire to expand and grow and to always amass more and more and more and more, have all these unnecessary possessions, if every human did their part to curb that appetite for relentless growth, insatiable greed, if every person did their part to stop their lust for objects, for things, for sense temptations, if everyone felt a calling towards greater harmony and peace and brotherhood, how could these outer manifestations of evil exist? How could it be possible? It could not. So he says, before you see the evil out there, first yourself, reflect yourself. Why are you spreading vibrations of evil through your dishonesty, through your cheating against yourself? So when you're unfaithful to your wife, first of all, it's not just the harm being done to her, it's to your own character, to your own spiritual growth. How could you disrespect yourself like that? How could you disrespect truth and purity and honesty within yourself, the highest self within you that only desires love for God, desires love, desires God as in the highest sense of everything, like peace, virtue, all these things. When you're doing that against somebody else, basically like cheating, stealing, lying, whatever it is, whatever it is, the greatest person you're harming is yourself. That's what I mean by character, right? Yourself. And the greatest sense, the highest objective of our lives, our greatest purpose is not out there, it's not external. It's yourself. How can I cultivate myself to be the highest potential of what I am? So that's what I want to leave you with. And a great practical way, beyond the big stuff, great practical way, smile. Keep smiling. Smile to yourself, be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself, right? I talk about introspection and growth, but again, it's like, it's not all just because I do that sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I'm hard on myself and I'm like, I can't believe I was like, I'm so like, and I feel bad about it. But then you have to see your progress. Like, look how far I've come. Like, look at this effort I'm making. And I should applaud myself and like applaud everyone for effort, for the progress. Applaud yourself, be kind to yourself. See the good within you, first of all. And then when you see the good, when you're connected within yourself, when you're proud of yourself, that's why when you volunteer and serve people, you feel better, you feel happier. So when you connect with when you serve other people and then are able to feel proud and good about yourself, right? If you feel good about yourself, and then to keep bringing it on cycles and just smile at people around you, so that the Indians can know that the Chinese people are not all bad. I'm just joking, by the way. So the Brazilians can know not all the Americans are bad. So the Muslims might all know that, for example, the Jewish are not bad. Right? You have to be the example. It's hard, I know it's hard. And I hope, I'll keep working hard, right? And for hopefully all of us. Yeah, so let's shed so that we hopefully can shed this unfortunate hypocrisy of our current politics, and the hypocrisy that have existed since millennia, right? Oftentimes, when we try to reform, I have to tell myself this first. I am a hypocrite a lot of times because I feel a strong sense to, sometimes I see someone I really strongly want to help them or like to do like help, right? I've been learning that like help, the greatest, strongest sense of help. Okay, this is a different topic. I should create a new video. But yeah, the greatest help, like only God can help, basically. I was reading in the Gospels of Sri Ramakrishna. God is the ultimate helper. So what is my arrogance to think that I can actually I mean, we can, anyway, this is a different topic. God helps through me. But but we perform great acts of hypocrisy when we try to do that. Like for example, the Christian missionaries of old, going to all these places, carrying the banner of trying to be talking about Christ on their lips, but performing the greatest acts of atrocity with their hands. Hypocrisy. When you're carrying the banner of democracy and light in the world and performing great acts of violence, hypocrisy. So yeah, take care of ourselves first, finding the highest path ourselves first. And I have to try that a lot more. So yes. Anyway, supposed to be leaving you with high vibrations of positivity and peace. So let's take a moment. I'm going to take a moment to connect with that and try to share that vibration. peace, love, and joy, and brotherhood. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Confucius once said, I'll end with this story because it's one of my favorite things. One time, a disciple complained. He says, you guys all have brothers and sisters, but I have none. I feel lonely. And the person he complained to said, you know, I belong in the world. 四海为家. The 4 seas are my home. 四海之内皆兄弟也. Everyone in the 4 seas is my brother and sister. So how can I be lonely? Beautiful, beautiful. 四海之内皆兄弟也. Everyone, a stranger, is your brother. Thank you so much. Bye.